Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around it is my review of the 2010 Finnish Christmas fantasy horror comedy Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. Now, Rare Exports is a film that I saw once before for a college foreign film class, and I wasn't too big on it then, but I decided to give it another shot because it's the holiday season and it is a film that is at least intriguing and definitely a unique movie. And I still wasn't able to get into this film. I thought this was pretty meh at best. At times, it was a little worse than meh. It was like one of those things where I think it's a well shot movie. I think some of the performers do their jobs rather adequately. I think the twist at the end is rather interesting. And I think there are other elements of the film that do work, but there's a lot of stuff about this movie that just didn't really do a lot for me or enough for me. It's a film that I know has gotten a ton of acclaim since its release and still does. I mean, you get a lot of people talking about how it's a gem. I mean, I agree with people saying that Deadly Games is a gem, but Rare Exports, I honestly don't get it because other than the twist at the end and the visuals, it's not really anywhere near as entertaining or as enjoyable to watch as some critics have been making it out to be. It's not as insane or crazy as they think it is either. It's also not as funny. I've seen critics say it's hilarious, it's a really funny tongue-in-cheek Christmas horror film in the vein of Gremlins, and I'm like, what movie are they watching? Because I didn't find anything about this funny. This isn't a rant because it didn't like piss me off, and I didn't feel like it was a total pointless waste of my time watching it because I liked the direction and there are some elements of it when it comes to the plot that are different than the norm, but I still can't say I liked the movie that much, and it's definitely not a film that I have any desire of watching again. It's directed by Jalmari Helander, and I think he did a great job. I think when it comes to this movie, one thing that I feel is rather undeniable is that this was a well directed film. He did a great job directing this film, working with a low budget, dealing with a lot of different restraints. I mean, he got the most out of what little that he had when it comes to this movie, when it comes to its production values. He got the most out of it when it comes to the visual style and the flair, and that was because he's a really capable filmmaker. You see it on display here in terms of the use of different techniques and styles, the use of different angles and other different perspectives, and how he works with his cast, how he works with the visual effects and some of the practical stuff, which there isn't a lot of, and honestly, I would have liked to have seen more. But it's one of those things where, despite the limitations, he works very well within them and is the most steady presence when it comes to the film when it applies to the quality of the production. He also wrote the film, and that's where I think he faltered a little bit. I don't think this is nearly as clever of a script as a lot of people have made it out to be. Um, the twist at the end was pretty clever. The fact that Santa Claus was this massive, giant Krampus like figure that is trapped in ice. The idea of taking something like John Carpenter's The Thing and then throwing in a Christmas horror film in there and kind of blending the two together, that's intriguing. Uh, Tying things in with, oh, you better not be naughty, you better not break the rules or these set of rules. Otherwise, Father Christmas is going to make you pay. So you can't swear, you can't drink, you can't do all this other stuff. Like, that was fun. I don't think they did as much with it as they could have. I think they did a better job with that, to be honest. And when it comes to this little spin-off that the same writer and filmmaker did in 2005, which actually I think this is a film. It says 2005, but this spin-off, it says it's a sequel, but it's confusing because yeah, it's based on the short. Okay, that's what it is. This is based on a short film called Rare Exports, and then there's a sequel called Rare Exports: The Official Safety Instructions, which is by the same writer and director. That's why I was a little mixed up there. Because I was like, wait a second, like this came out 2010 and there's a little sequel spin-off that came out in 2005. That doesn't make any sense. But that's because of the fact that those were short films that were made before this movie. And I think that's honestly where this concept works the best, is as a short, because then the limitations of the budget, the limitations of what you're able to do with the story aren't nearly as glaring. And yeah, I just felt like the official safety instructions just handled the whole bit of, oh, you can't drink, you can't cuss, you can't do all this, otherwise you're gonna pay. I thought that was handled better than here, and I thought it was actually more clever. I don't know why the same writer didn't just kind of take the approach that he used there and then put it in this movie, because whatever approach he had here just really didn't cut it for me. And when a lot of the comedy is just, oh my god, these elves are naked old men with pickaxes, I'm like, that's not funny to me. That's random, but it's not funny. Like, what is genuinely hilarious about that? Like, I just thought it was just random and weird. I'm sorry, random and weird by on its own is not funny for me personally. Like, I need to try to provide an actual punchline or a setup or something. And speaking of, the naked old men, that was a clever twist. The fact that the old guy that they caught wasn't really Santa Claus; it was one of his elves. But it's just one of those things where this is a script where pretty much nothing happens for the first hour. I think it overestimated and just really exaggerated the strengths of these characters. Like, it really felt that um Piperin, or was it Piperin and Pitari and Rauno and Amo and Riley and Juso, all of these characters were strong enough and had enough depth and personality to carry the film for an hour. And I just didn't feel that was the case at all. It started off promising with the stuff on the base and this rich um, asshole who is talking about Santa Claus and how they found something in the ice. And it seemed like it was a good setup for something that could be creepy, but also tongue in cheek enough that it would be fun. But then it doesn't really do a whole lot with that. And then you get to like the rules and all of that, and you really start focusing a lot on this kid, Pete. I think Pitari. I think that's who it is, and it just wasn't really anywhere near as compelling as I feel the writer thought it was. And even the stuff when they catch the elf or who they think is Santa Claus, and Father Christmas is mad, and there's that whole bit where some of the team of what it might as well be mercenaries. I don't think they are mercenaries, but one of the team members, I think, gets his head knocked off, but it's done so quickly and without any genuine like gore or uh, sense of creativity. Like, it's very bland. It's just head knocked off, rolls on the ground for a little bit, and that's it. Like, there's a lot of stuff where you're like, oh, you could do something more with this in terms of Father Christmas. I'm not talking about like a giant 50-foot tall like Krampus smashing through things. I mean, you could do something like that. That might be better than just having these naked old men elves who just don't really do much of anything except chase after Piperin and the helicopter and get herded into uh, uh, a fence. Like, it's one of those things. It was like they herded into a fence. You have the big moment where Krampus gets exploded, gets blown up, and that was fun. But like, it's one of those things where okay, that was it. Like, we got blown up, and that was it. And now the elves don't have Father Christmas anymore. And then that ties into the title Rare Exports, where now they are packing these elves up and sending them across the globe and charging exorbitant amounts of money to people to have their own Santa Claus. And I'm like, why the hell would anyone pay $85 million, or is it 85,000 or something? Like, it was a exorbitant amount of money for their own Santa Claus. Like, I don't really understand it. Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe there's a disconnect for me because I'm not Finnish, but I don't get why that is funny, let alone something that makes any sense. Like, why would anybody pay money for these old naked white men? Oh, well, they're not going to be naked anymore. They're going to be dressed up like Santa. But what makes them any different than any other old guy dressed as Santa Claus? Oh, because of the fact that they have these magic powers or something? Well, you don't see a lot of that on display, except one of their eyes glow a little bit. So I don't get why it's so special to have one of these elves. It just doesn't register. Maybe I missed something, because admittedly I was nodding off, like off and on throughout the first hour of this movie because I thought it was so boring. But I mean, yeah, there's some moments in the climax that are fun. Like I said, the explosion, the stuff with Pitari on hanging on the net with the kids who were kidnapped and herding the elves around. But that was kind of fun. But I mean, even the stuff with, like I said, even the stuff with what might as well be Krampus, like, he gets his horns cut off and blown up in what seems like 2 minutes or something. Like, he didn't seem like he put up much of a fight. That's the other thing. This big Father Christmas, they're trying to build him up as this intimidating, sort of badass uh, source of evil, and oh, we must destroy him, otherwise everyone's going to be screwed this Christmas and beyond. And he's just stuck in a block of ice and does nothing. Does nothing to prevent these guys from cutting his horns off and blowing his ass up. Like, doesn't use any magic powers, doesn't use anything in his disposal to do a damn thing. He might as well just been sitting there, or just sorry, not sitting there, just standing there, frozen with a thumb up his ass. Because that's really what that thing was doing. It didn't do jack shit. So that was kind of disappointing. You set up this big evil baddie, and then he doesn't do fucking anything worth of note or worth mentioning, because there's nothing to mention. His elves do all the work for him. And yeah, the whole ending with the rare exports and the warehouse with all the Santa Claus in them and flying them in a giant bomber plane, and now they're entrepreneurs and they've got this business and they're making all this money, and I'm just kind of like, there has to be something that I'm missing. Like, there has to be some sort of cultural thing that makes this clever or funny, because I'm completely lost, because I'm just like, whatever. Like, that's really that's really my response to that. Just a whole bunch of whatever. So yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not a rant, except I do have some moments where I'm ranting because I just don't get it. I don't understand why this gets 90% Rotten Tomatoes. People talk about how it's a great movie. It's some kind of underrated masterwork. It's like it just doesn't register for me. I thought this was pretty boring for the most part for the first hour. Got kind of interesting for like the last bit of the movie, but at that point it was rounding out and was pretty much finished. And then by the end of it all, I was just scratching my head like, okay, that was it. That was it. You had this that had all this build up. You had a slow burn, and you had a big explosion, but it kind of just didn't even feel like even the big explosion was worth the wait. So that's the thing. Like you have this big, massive explosion, and you think that that would be worth the slog that is like the first hour of the movie, but it just isn't because the writing just is not that strong when it comes to these characters, making you care about them, making you give any amount of shit about them. And then when it comes to the stuff with the uh the elves and all this other stuff, like it's not nowhere near as intense or as crazy or as fun as it could have been. It's definitely a film that feels very tame when it comes to its sense of violence. Like, it seemed like a missed opportunity for sure. Like, why not go balls out with the gore or something then? If you don't have a whole lot of stuff going on, maybe at least have a few moments where the elves go out and take somebody out in bloody and entertaining fashion, but you don't even get that. You don't even get a bit with Krampus or Father Christmas doing anything. So eh, that's really how I feel about this story. It's just very meh or worse. uh I'm fine with the cast though. I mean, the performers, they did a good job. I'm not going to blame them. I think the actors and the actresses and the cast, there's not a lot of actresses. It's mostly just male characters. Um I don't even remember seeing a single female character. There probably was somebody at one point, but the majority of them are all men or young men, and the performers, they did fine. I mean, Onni Tommila as Pitari is probably the biggest standout. Um, Even though I didn't really care that much about the kid because of the script, I thought I thought the performance was good enough, and he had enough charisma that I was at least drawn to a few of the scenes, or a good amount of the scenes that he was in. Jorma Tommila is Rauno, and Tommi Korpela is Amo, and Rauno Juvonen is Piperin, and Christian Ellefsen is Riley, and Ilmari Järvenpää is Yuso. Like, all of those characters are just kind of run of the mill. But the performers are good. The performers are fine. Like the guy who played Pipper, Pip A Renin. I'm sorry, I can't say these names. What can I say? I'm a white boy from the Pacific Northwest. Like this is a lost cause, but it's just one of those things where he did a good, all right job with what he was given to work with, and this is one of those things where like same thing goes for the actors who play the elves. Like the performances were fine, but nothing that special. But then again, I think the script let them down. They didn't give them a whole lot to work with. Had some nice technical elements as well. It's well shot by Mika Orasma when it comes to the cinematography, especially when it comes to a lot of the sequences that are at the base, or even showcasing the warehouse of rare exports at the end of the movie, or the scenes where the old man who they think is Santa Claus is tied up and so on. There's some nice looking shots in this that definitely do showcase some some really a strong moments of style and mood and atmosphere. The editing is fine too by Kimo Tavala, or Tavila, and the music by Yuri Seppa and Miska Seppa is kind of generic. Action beats here and there, maybe a little bit of some lighthearted notes, but nothing really that memorable when it comes to the music or the score. The film is only 82 minutes, which is why it's so crazy that the first hour is so slow and so dull and so boring. It's only 82 minutes. Like, why is the first half so tedious when it's not even an hour and a half? And it's because there's just not a lot of intrigue or entertainment or fun in the first hour or so, despite the concept and despite some of the other elements that were at work when it comes to this story. It's one of those movies where it's fine at times, but the rest of the time, like, it's just not anything special. So it really is one of those movies where I'm like, yeah, okay, that was a film. That was a movie. Uh had some interesting concepts and ideas, a nice twist at the end, a big explosion, but it just didn't really feel that satisfying as a whole. It is one of those movies where, no, it's not like a lump of coal in your stocking, but it's still one of those movies where it's like the equivalent of like a Christmas gift where instead of getting something you really wanted, you just get socks. It's like, okay, socks are useful and there are good things about socks, but I'm not really that enthusiastic about getting socks. Like that's how I feel about rare exports. But anyway, that's my review of the film. And until next time, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.